Hello everybody, Toreno here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Kings of Battle update, which has just this morning been released on the War Thunder live server. And we're going to be taking a look at the tanks of the update today. And we're going to be starting off with the American tech tree, and we're going to be going along to the right until we get to Israel. And we're going to be starting off with the M109A1, which is a new artillery vehicle that has been introduced in the update. Rank 4, battle rating 6.3. There's been quite a few of these vehicles added into various different tech trees, some with minor differences, some without. So it's got a 155mm cannon and a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof, and it fires 3 different types of ammunition: your standard M107 HE shell, M107 PF HEVT shell, so it's got a variable time fuse so you can explode that above enemy roofs to get through the thin roof armour, and a smoke shell. Got a top speed of 35 miles per hour when going forward on 8 gears and 7.3 miles per hour in reverse on 4 gears, and it's got a crew of 6. So you've got your driver in the hole here, machine gunner, well, probably more of a loader, but in-game he's called a machine gunner, 2 loaders, a commander, and a gunner in the turret. And yeah, so this is a pretty standard artillery vehicle, very lightly armoured, maxing out at about 32mm, and it's aluminium alloy. So despite the sloping, that's still going to be relatively easy to penetrate from most tank guns, though autocannons might struggle a little bit. And yeah, it's nice to see that we're getting some artillery vehicles in the new update, and hopefully this is just the beginning of artillery vehicles being added to War Thunder. Of course, we have got all the various self-propelled howitzer vehicles that I've been covering in my US Tanks series that need to be added as well, so hopefully we'll see them in the future as well. Then moving on, we've got the premium T54E2, rank 5, battle rating 7.7, and you could buy that for 8,380 golden eagles. Now this is very similar to the T54E1 that's already in game, but this uses more conventional technology. So it's got a standard turret, it hasn't got an oscillating turret, it doesn't come with an autoloader, it doesn't come with any gun stabilization. It's got the same 105mm cannon, so fires the same APBC shell with 191mm penetration at 500 meters, APDS with 336mm penetration at the same distance, and a Heat FS shell with 380mm penetration, as well as a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof in this little cupola turret area, and a 7.62mm machine gun in the coaxial position. And it's got the same hull armour as on the E2. The turret's a little bit different, but it's very well sloped, at least around the top half. If you use protection analysis, you can see there is a bit of a weak spot around the lower turret, so that's where you'll want to aim for. And it's got a top speed going forward of 26.7 miles per hour on 4 gears and a reverse speed of 5.2 miles per hour on 1 gear. It's not the fastest tank in the world, but without the gun stabilization, that does help with aiming the gun a little bit better. And it's got a crew of 4, got a driver in the hull, gunner, commander, and loader in the turret. And the commander can also fire the main armament, and he's more in this upper turret with the machine gun. And unfortunately, there has been a bit of a change to the cupola up here, because that was very heavily armoured before on the dev server. It now looks like it can just be penetrated very easily, which can cause a bit of a weak spot. But yeah, I think this is a good premium tank for the American tech tree. It would have been nice to have this in the regular tech tree, but it is a prototype tank, so I can sort of see why they've added it as a premium tank. And officially in-game, it's not quite as good as the E1. It's 0.3 of a battle rating lower, but I think you can still do very well with this tank. Moving on to Germany, we've actually got another M109, although this one is a little bit different, because as you can see, the 105mm howitzer is a lot shorter. So this doesn't actually affect the penetration. It's got the same penetration, 61mm, but it's only got a muzzle velocity of 563 meters a second. The long-barreled American variant has 684 meters a second muzzle velocity, so 121 meters a second more on the more conventional long-barreled vehicle. So yeah, this is going to struggle a little bit at longer ranges. It does also seem to come with smoke grenades, unlike the American one, and instead of a 12.7mm machine gun, we have the 7.62mm MG3A1. So it's going to be a little less effective in the anti-air role, unfortunately. And other than that, it seems to be broadly the same as the American variant. It's got the same crew count, it's got the same armour thickness, seems to have the same engine. So this is just a bit of a side grade to the American one because, like I say, less effective gun, but it does come with smoke grenades, unlike the American variant. And this is coming in at battle rating 6.0, rank 4, and that's coming in between the Nashorn and the M41 on the German tech tree. Now, moving on to the Soviets, we've got two vehicles here. So we'll start off with the BTR 152D, which is an improvement of the already in-game BTR 152 because it's got four 14.5mm KPVT machine guns. So with the armour-piercing century tracer round, you can penetrate 46mm of armour at 100 metres. I believe with the Browning machine gun, you can only penetrate 29mm. So this will be pretty decent against lightly armoured vehicles. And yeah, the armour is pretty light, but it will protect you against small arms fire at least. You can't just machine gun the entire crew to death, and they are, at least some of them, behind the armour. They're not really sticking their heads out except for the gunner himself. You've got a crew of 5, so you've got your gunner on the gun, 2 loaders in the back, commander and driver at the front. And it's got a top speed going forward of 52 miles per hour on 8 gears and a reverse speed of 6.7 miles per hour on 2 gears. And I think this will be a very good addition to the Soviet tech tree because at the moment, at 3.7, you've got the ZSU-37, which, if you hit an enemy with that gun, it's going to do a lot of damage, probably destroy the enemy aircraft in one hit. But of course, you have got to hit the enemy, you've only got one gun. I think players are probably going to prefer the BTR 152D, to be honest, because it does seem like players do just generally prefer faster firing, but not quite as hard-hitting weapons. And KPVT is a very hard-hitting weapon anyway, so I can see that being a very popular substitute to the early Soviet SPAA vehicles. And if we come down to the bottom of the Soviet tech tree, between the Sturm S and Chrysanthema S, we've got the Object 775, the very flat tank destroyer or missile carrying vehicle, which is coming in at battle rating 9.3, rank 6. So like I discussed before, it's got a not particularly great lower hull armour thickness. The upper hull front is pretty good though, and the turret is okay-ish. So if we look at the stock Heat FS shell on the Leopard 1A5, it can technically penetrate the turret, but it's not the whole turret, and some of those areas are quite hard to hit. I mean, this bit here would be quite easy to hit. It would be basically impervious to HESH shells except on the very top of the turret. But then once you get to the APFS DS rounds, especially in improved ones, it becomes much easier to destroy it. But as you can see with stock shells, this is basically immune on the upper hull front plate. So if you can get this behind cover, it will be a very hard target to destroy. And of course, it carries anti-tank guided missiles. So you've got the Rubin, which has a range of 4 kilometers, SACLOS guidance, and a penetration of 500mm. And you've also got the Burr high explosive missile, which only has a penetration of 37mm, but of course, that will be enough to destroy lightly armoured vehicles. And it has got some composite armour at the front as well to help against Heat FS shells. And that weak spot was the gunner optics, which has a zoom of 4 times to 10 times. Its top speed is 40 miles per hour going forward on 7 gears, and only reverse speed of 2.8 miles per hour on 1 gear. And of course, a bit of a weakness is you only have 2 crew, so you've got your driver and your commander who also fires the main armament, and they're both within the turret. So like I say, the turret is pretty well protected, so they are pretty well protected, but if any damage gets through, even if it only injures them, it's going to slow down your reload rates and other stats. And of course, if you do kill one of the crew, you're going to knock out the entire vehicle. So, a bit of a glass cannon in many respects, but I think this will be a very lethal vehicle. Like I say, if you get this behind cover, it's going to be very difficult to knock it out from the front. We'll have to see how it plays in game, but I think this will be a very successful vehicle. Now, moving on to Britain, we're going to start off with the Vickers Mark 11, which comes between the Vickers Mark 3 and the VF M5 at battle rating 8.7. And this is an armoured car, or technically it's called a light tank in the game, but it's an armoured car. Very lightly armoured, especially around the chassis. The turret armour's pretty good, but it's not as good as on the later VF M5, which has a bit of high hardness rolled armour. And while it is better than the chassis, it's still very lightly armoured to most tank guns. It might protect you against some autocannon fire though, if you're lucky. And it comes with the same 105mm gun as on that vehicle, so you got your standard Heat FS shell with 400mm penetration, HESH with 127mm penetration, and an APFS DS round with 333mm penetration at 1000 metres. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with the DM33 APFS DS round, which is an improved variant which has 389mm penetration at 1000 metres. But this is 0.3 of a battle rating lower, so it will still do decently well. Can be equipped with smoke grenades, comes with a coaxial 7.62mm machine gun and a little bit of internal armour. Got a top speed going forward of 65 miles per hour on 6 gears and a reverse speed of 6.2 miles per hour on 1 gear, so very good for getting around the battlefield. It's going to be a bit slow getting away from enemies, especially if you're having to reverse away. And you've got a crew of 4, so you've got your driver at the front here, and then your gunner, commander and loader in the turret. And the commander can also fire the main armament. And this is a bit of a blessing because, of course, if a shell obliterates the front of the vehicle, the turret is going to be mostly unharmed, especially with this internal armour to catch any spalling. But likewise, if the turret's obliterated, you're only going to have your driver left, and that's going to knock out the vehicle. So I think this is a good addition to the British tech tree, and I'm hoping we will start seeing more British armoured cars and light tanks, like the Saladin armoured car and the Scorpion and Scimitar light tanks, as well as the Fox armoured car, which I did cover all of those vehicles in a recent video looking at British light tanks. So hopefully this is a trend towards seeing more British light tanks being introduced to the British tech tree. And then Britain also gets an M109A1, so this is the long-barrelled variant. Comes with a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof, same shells as on the American variant. Doesn't come with smoke grenades, unfortunately. Same light armour, same speed, and your same crew of 6. So this will work more or less the same as the American variant. It's the same battle rating, 6.3, rank 4, coming in between the FV4005 and the Tortoise. And yeah, I think it'll be an effective vehicle, and it is nice to see Britain getting an artillery vehicle. Would be nice to see some of the British artillery vehicles being added at some point in the future, like the AS90. So maybe when that's added, it can replace the M109A1. We could just use this as a placeholder for the moment. But yeah, I think it'll be an effective vehicle for the British tech tree, if not spectacular. Now, moving on to Japan, they only got one vehicle, but it's a very important vehicle. It's the Type 81C, which is coming after the Type 93 in the anti-air lineup. It's coming in at battle rating 10.0. So this is an improved SAM vehicle for the Japanese because Type 93 isn't that popular from what I understand. I mean, it's not a truck chassis, so it's completely unarmoured. So very easy to destroy, but it is a SAM vehicle. It's meant to be operating behind the lines. And it only comes with one missile, the Type 81C, which I believe has about double the range of the missile used on the Type 93. So it's got infrared guidance, got all aspects targeting. It's got a lock-on range in rear aspect of 11 kilometres, but in all aspect it's 6 kilometres. And it's got a launch range of 10 kilometres, like I say, about double that of the previous missile on the Type 93. And it's got a maximum speed of 955 metres a second with a 35G maximum overload. So this is a much faster missile. It's got much better range. Basically, it's just an improvement over the previous Type 93. And you can carry 8 of these missiles, so you can see that it's carrying a whole bunch of them on the sides here. So you've got 4 ready to go, 4 in these side racks, which could be a little bit dicey if an enemy comes across you from the side. But then again, all they have to do is target the crew compartment, which only has 2 crew. You've got your driver and your commander who fires the main armament. And if we look at the optics, it's got track IRST. Like I say, it's got a range of 10 kilometres. And it's got BVR mode and ACM mode. And it's got 6 times to 12 times zoom. And it's got a pretty good targeting speed in the vertical of 22 degrees a second. And in the horizontal of 60 degrees a second. So very effective at tracking enemy targets. And if we look at the speed, it's got a top speed going forward of 56 miles per hour on 6 gears, and in reverse of 7.5 miles per hour on 1 gear. So pretty fast getting around the battlefield. Not the fastest reverse speed, but then again, like I say, it's supposed to be behind enemy lines. So this is basically a much better vehicle than the Type 93, just on account of the improved missiles. Is a little bit slower than the Type 93, but it's still fast enough, and I think this will be a very good addition for the Japanese tech tree, especially in the higher tiers, and will hopefully provide much better anti-air coverage than the previous vehicle. Now, moving on to China, they only got the one vehicle, the PLZ-83, between the Su-100 and the M113A1 TOW. that's coming in at 6.3 rank 4, and it is again another artillery vehicle. So again, this is a very artillery-centric update so far. And as you can see, very light armour, like maxes out about 15mm or 30mm on the turret, but only in very specific places, mostly going to be about 15 to 10mm everywhere else. It's got a 152mm cannon and a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof. It carries a HE shell, 49mm penetration, as well as a VT version, so again, good for targeting enemy roofs, which are much more thinly armoured. Comes with a crew of 5, so you've got your driver in the front here, surrounded by a little bit of internal armour, and then the rest of the crew are in the turret, so you've got your gunner, 2 loaders, and your commander. And you've got a whole bunch of ammo at the back here, so if you're attacked from the back, that's going to go off very easily. And it's got a top speed going forward of 35 miles per hour on 5 gears, and backwards of 5.3 miles per hour on 1 gear. And unfortunately, the targeting speed for the horizontal is 5.9 degrees a second and only 5.6 degrees a second for the vertical, so it's not going to be exactly the most responsive vehicle to enemy threats. But again, it is an artillery vehicle, it's not really designed in real life to be dueling against enemy tanks. And again, like with the other vehicles, I think this will be a good addition for the Chinese tech tree, because we don't really have many artillery vehicles, well, any artillery vehicles for the Chinese tech tree, unless we're counting the ISU 152. And so, yeah, like with the M109, it's not exactly a groundbreaking addition, but I think it will be pretty useful for the Chinese tech tree, and it will be nice to use this vehicle in battle. Now, moving on to Italy, we've got 2 new additions, the M109G, which is like the German variant of the M109, but also the Leopard 4070, which is battle rating 5.0 between the M42 Contrario and the R3 T20. Now, one major change that has been made compared to the dev server, to be honest, I'm not sure it was ever actually present within the testing ground, but I didn't have it unlocked to test, but the vertical guidance is plus 90. In the dev server, it was stated it was only plus 20, which would make it an awful anti-air vehicle, but like I say, it's actually plus 90, so pretty good. You know, very good for engaging enemy aerial targets. It's got a crew of 4, so you've got your driver in the hole here at the front, and then you've got your gunner and your commander and 2 loaders in the fighting compartment. The commander can also fire the main armament. And it's got a targeting speed of 51 degrees horizontal and 25 degrees vertical, so very quick at engaging enemy aircraft. And then when it comes to the armour and the speed, you have to remember this is built on the Leopard 1 chassis. So while the fighting compartment is extremely exposed, with some of the crew not even behind armour, and the ones that are behind armour, it's only 8mm thick, so they're not particularly well protected. But the driver in the hull is very well protected. He's got a effective thickness of about 110 to 115mm on the upper hull front plate, and even the lower hull front plate is again about 100mm. So if we go to the M6A1 and test it with its M62 APC-BC shell, and from 500 metres, it can't really penetrate the hull front, apart from this area here where apparently penetration is, where apparently technically could penetrate, but it's very low chance. It can't penetrate from the front, basically. If we try the M36 GMC, which is 0.3 of a battle rating higher than it, then that one can penetrate, but again, in areas, it's only a low possibility because of these tracks. And if this goes into a down tier, so against, say, the T14, it can't penetrate. Try it with the improved APC-BC shell. Again, can't really penetrate. So depending on whether you're in an up tier or a down tier, this could be very trolly. Basically, always aim for the fighting compartment. Just never aim for the hull unless you're extremely likely to penetrate it. So with your higher tier vehicles. Then if we go to the speed, it's got a top speed of 40 miles per hour on 8 gears, and a reverse speed of 15.6 miles per hour on 4 gears. So a very mobile vehicle. And like I said on the dev server, it carries default shells with 50-50 AP shells and anti-air shells, an anti-air only belt, but also an APC-BC only belt. And this has a penetration 1,000 metres of 63mm, so this could easily deal with many enemy tanks. So like I said in the dev server, I think this will be a very effective anti-air vehicle, but also a very effective anti-tank vehicle. I think that's why it's been bumped up in battle rating ever so slightly. And honestly, if it was given its more advanced ammunition like the HEVT shells, I could see this going up to a much higher battle rating, but I think they just wanted to fix this gap between the M42 and the R3 T20 for the moment. Maybe it could be bumped up between the R3T20 and the ZSU-57-2 if given its improved shells, or between the 57-2 and the 23-4. But again, that would still leave this gap in the lower tiers that would need fill-in. So while it's not an ideal vehicle for filling that gap, I think it will do a very decent job. And we'll just have to see how it plays in-game, whether it will need up-tiering or down-tiering, and go from there, I suppose. And then, of course, the other Italian vehicle is the M109G. So it comes with smoke grenades, the short-barreled 155mm gun, same ammunition, 12.7mm machine gun on the roof here, same armour, same top speed, and your same crew complement. So much like with the German one, it is good to see more artillery vehicles being introduced. This is coming in at battle rating 6.0 rank 4, and it's helping to fill the gap between the M36B1 and the M113A1 TOW. Though it's only at 6.0 compared to the M36B1 at 5.7, so it doesn't really fill the gap that much. We still need a vehicle for rank 5. Possibly the Palmarias can fill that gap, but I don't know enough about those vehicles to definitively say if that's the case. But like I say, it's an okay addition, but nothing particularly groundbreaking. Then moving on to France, we've got two new additions. One is the M26, which is coming in at battle rating 6.7 rank 4 between the M4A4 SA50 and the Lorraine Char, so helping to fill this gap at rank 4. Comes with a 90mm gun and a 12.7mm machine gun on the roof, as well as a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. And it comes with 5 different shells. The T-33 APBC shell with 146mm penetration at 1000 metres. The M82 with 155mm penetration at 1000 metres. An APCR shell with 234mm penetration, HE shell with 20mm max penetration, and a smoke shell. And it's got a maximum armour of 101mm on the front of the turret and the front of the hull. It's got a top speed going forward of 29.9 miles per hour on 6 gears, and a reverse speed of 8.8 miles per hour on 2 gears, and a crew of 5. So you've got your machine gunner and driver at the front here, and your gunner, commander, and loader in the turret. So nothing groundbreaking, but does help to fill out that gap in the French tech tree. So a welcome addition in that regard. And the other new vehicle is an SPAA vehicle, which is helping to fill out this massive gap between the AMX-13 DCA-40 and the AMX-30 DCA. And that is the AMX-10P, which is a rank 4 battle rating 5.3 vehicle. So very lightly armoured, like its aluminium alloy, maxes out about 20 to 30mm. So it protects against small arms fire and autocannon fire, but not much beyond that. And it doesn't have a particularly effective anti-armour weapon. It maxes out at 61mm penetration at 100 metres. But it does come with the anti-air high explosive fragmentation incendiary tracer shells, which will be very useful for against enemy aircraft, because of course this is an SPAA vehicle, and so it's got a good targeting speed of 30 degrees a second in the horizontal and 17 degrees a second in the vertical. It's got a reload rate of 10.4 seconds, which isn't the greatest, but it's not the worst in the world either. Also comes with a 7.62mm machine gun for protection against soft-skin vehicles if you're reloading your main cannon. And it comes with a crew of 3, so you've got your driver at the front here, and your gunner and commander in the turret, with the commander also able to fire the main armament. So this is a good addition to the French tech tree. And to be honest, like I say, I think many players do prefer having the faster firing vehicles. So I can see this being much more popular than the DCA-40. And so yeah, I think this is a good addition for the French tech tree, and it's a much needed improvement in French anti-air vehicles. Though of course we're still going to need more to fill out this gap at rank 5 at the very least. Now moving on to Sweden, we've next got the PBV 501, which is coming in between the PVKV2 and the IKV91 at rank 4 battle rating 6.7. And this was basically a BMP-1 that was modified by the Swedes. Unfortunately, there's also a bit of an inaccuracy in this vehicle in the form of the autoloader, which, as far as I'm aware, when I looked this up after the last video, the autoloader was removed along with the missile systems. So this shouldn't have an autoloader, basically. This should have manual loading, which would probably increase the reload rate from 6 seconds. If that's how it was in real life, then that is how it should be in the game. And of course, you do also have your 7.62mm machine gun in the turret, and for your ammunition, you've got a heat shell with 300mm penetration, and a high explosive shell with 11mm penetration. Other than that, it's pretty similar to the regular BMP one, so pretty light armour, although, you might bounce a few shells if you're lucky, and some areas will protect against autocannon fire at the very least. It's got the same top speed, so 40 miles per hour forward in 5 gears, 6.9 miles per hour in reverse on 1 gear, and 3 crew in the vehicle, so 2 in the hull and your gunner in the turret, who also does the tank loader's duties, except it's an autoloader, so the autoloader does the tank loading duties from the looks of it. And I think this is a good addition, to be fair, because of course it doesn't come with the missiles, so this is just a not quite as effective light tank. And it does help to fill out this gap between the PVKV2 and the IKV91. So coming in at 6.7, it does fill that gap rather nicely. And autoloader aside, which I hope will be fixed in the future, I think this will be a very effective light tank for the Swedish tech tree. And then lastly, we come to the Israeli M109, which is coming in at battle rating 6.0 between the TCM-20 and Saklam Tiger. So this is one of the lowest battle rating vehicles, because you've only got the M51 and TCM-20 with the same or lower battle ratings, and the M51W. And this is the short-barreled version, so it's going to have less muzzle velocity than the long-barreled versions. Has the same high explosive shells, doesn't come with smoke grenades, and again, pretty much the same armour, or exactly the same armour as far as I can tell, and your same crew of 6. And your same top speed, 35 miles per hour forward on 8 gears, 7.3 miles per hour in reverse on 4 gears. So, again, it's a good addition for the Israeli tech tree, but not going to be anything particularly groundbreaking as far as I can tell. Although, Israel doesn't really have any, derp cannon type vehicles, at least in the lower tiers that I can see. Although, I think they're also going to have a new line put in at some point, because you've got all your tank destroyers and artillery vehicles and your SPAA vehicles all in one line, which is a bit weird. Hopefully, once they start getting more vehicles, they can, split these into actual tank destroyer lines and SPAA lines. So hopefully that'll be a thing that'll happen at some point in the future. And so that is all of the tanks of the Kings of Battle update. And to be honest, there's nothing particularly groundbreaking here, I don't think. I mean, we've seen quite a few gaps filled in, which is very good. I always like it when an update goes back and fills in some of those gaps that, make it hard to have good lineups or force you to use inferior vehicles at the higher battle ratings. It was only a small update this time, especially after the massive update where we got the Hungarian subtree. And to be fair, we still got a very good amount of vehicles. I don't think there was anything truly awful here, to be honest. Other than the PBV 501 having its autoloader that it's not supposed to have. Hopefully that will be fixed in the future. I'm probably going to be looking forward to the Vickers Mk the most, just because Britain doesn't really have many light tanks or armoured cars, well, at least domestically made ones. Of course, we do have the South African subtree to give us a lot of British armoured cars and light tanks. But it's going to be a little while before I unlock that, because still at rank 3 on the British tech tree. But like I say, overall, I think this is a decent update, nothing groundbreaking, but we have got some very good additions to the game here. And I'm hoping that we will start getting more British light tanks and armoured cars at some point in the future. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that episode. Hopefully you'll join me for the next one. I've been Toreno, and I'll see you next time.